Some families keep secrets that should die with them, but others hide truths so monstrous that only the courage to tell them can prevent history from repeating itself. And today, I'm going to share with you the most terrible secret a mother can keep about her own daughters. Good afternoon, my dears. My name is Helen Peterson, but everyone here calls me Grandma Helen or Miss Helen. I'm 81 years old, born in January 1943 in a small town you've probably never heard of, Millfield in rural Kentucky, where families knew each other for generations and secrets were kept like treasures buried in the backyard. Folks, tell me in the comments, how many of you still remember making soap with lye and ashes, or when we used to heat flat irons on wood stoves? I want to see how many warrior grandmas like me are out there. And if you're enjoying this conversation, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a like so this grandma knows she's not talking to herself. I was born in a time when women were valued for what they could keep silent about, where having twin daughters was considered a blessing from God, but where a mother could love one daughter like gold and treat the other like a roadside stone. My story is about how I discovered that not all maternal love is real love, and how some people are capable of things that even the devil wouldn't dare to do. I was born with my twin sister, Laura Peterson. We were identical as two raindrops, but from an early age, our mother, Mrs. Carla, made a point of dressing and styling us differently, as if she couldn't stand the idea of having two identical daughters. I was always the proper girl, obedient, who helped with housework without complaining. Laura was always the one who questioned, who talked back, who wouldn't accept rules without understanding why. Our house was on the main street of Millfield, a wooden structure with a front porch and a large backyard, where Mama raised chickens and grew vegetables to supplement the family income. Daddy worked at City Hall, a job that was considered very good at the time, and Mama took care of the house and us two with a dedication that seemed saintly, but which hid a cruelty that only with time did I come to understand. From childhood, I noticed that Mama treated Laura differently than me. When Laura misbehaved, she got spanked. When I did the same thing, Mama laughed and said it was child cleverness. When Laura asked for something, she always heard a dry no. When I asked, Mama melted and rushed to get what I wanted. Laura is too rebellious, I heard Mama telling the neighbors over the backyard fence. But Helen is an angel, a golden girl. This one will make me very proud in life. It was as if Mama had decided, from the moment we were born, which daughter would be the favorite and which would be the disappointment. And no matter how hard Laura tried to be like me, no matter how much she tried to please, Mama always found fault with her and quality in me. I suffered from this as much as Laura, but in a different way. I felt guilty for being the favorite, felt the weight of having to be perfect all the time. Many nights, when Mama was already asleep, I would go to Laura's bed and cry quietly. "Laura, I don't want to be the favorite," I whispered to her. "I wish Mama loved us both the same." "But she doesn't," Laura responded, already with a bitterness that an 8-year-old child shouldn't have. "And she never will." We grew up in this strange climate where Laura was always blamed for everything and I was always the victim of everything. If something broke in the house, it was Laura's fault, even when she wasn't anywhere near. If there was any problem at school, Mama automatically assumed it was Laura's doing. If I got a bad grade, it was also Laura's fault, because she must have influenced me toward evil. When we reached adolescence, this difference became even crueler. I got new clothes, Laura inherited mine when they became too small. I could go out with friends, Laura had to stay home helping with cleaning. I could go to church gatherings, Laura heard that rebellious girls don't deserve fun. It was at 15 that Laura met Victor Reynolds, an 18-year-old boy who had moved to Millfield with his family. Victor was handsome, well-spoken, dressed differently from the other boys in town. He worked at his father's hardware store and had a red motorcycle that was the envy of all the young people in town. When Victor started paying attention to Laura, she felt like the most special girl in the world. Finally, someone was choosing her instead of choosing me. Finally, someone found her interesting, beautiful, important. Mama, of course, didn't like the relationship at all. "That boy is no good," she said. "You're too rebellious, Laura. You'll end up in trouble dating that kind of person." But the more Mama spoke ill of Victor, the more Laura clung to him. It was her form of rebellion, her way of showing that she could make her own decisions. If Mama didn't want her as the good daughter, she would be the rebellious daughter indeed. Victor was initially affectionate, attentive. He took Laura for motorcycle rides, gave small gifts that were worth gold to her. He made her feel special, loved, desired. It was everything she didn't receive at home, everything Mama reserved only for me. I, meanwhile, was dating John Carter, the son of the pharmacy owner, a quiet and studious boy that Mama completely approved of. Now that's more like it, she would say. Helen chose a boy from a good family, a boy who will take good care of her. It was always like that. Laura's choices were wrong, mine were right. Her dreams were silly, mine were important. Her feelings didn't matter, mine were sacred. Over time, Victor began to change. He became more possessive, more jealous, more aggressive. He didn't like Laura talking to other people, didn't want her going out without him, controlled even what clothes she wore. But Laura was so starved for attention, so desperate to be loved by someone, that she confused control with care. "It's because he loves me too much," Laura justified to me when I noticed the bruises on her arm. "It's because he's afraid of losing me." I tried to warn my sister, but she wouldn't listen. She thought I was jealous because finally she had someone who chose her first. She thought I didn't understand what true love was because I always had everything easy in life. The first slap came on a Friday in December 1960. Laura was 17 and had spoken with a classmate about a school assignment. Victor saw from a distance, became furious, and when they arrived at their usual meeting place, he gave her such a hard slap that her ear was ringing for a week. "I don't want to see you talking to any man again," he said, holding Laura's chin firmly. "You're mine, Laura. Only mine." Laura cried, he apologized, promised it would never happen again. He brought flowers the next day, declared his love, said he had lost his head because of how much he loved her. And my sister, who had never received flowers from anyone, who had never heard declarations of love, forgave him. From that day on, the aggressions became routine, always followed by apologies, always justified by the too much love he felt. And Laura always forgave, because in her distorted mind, being assaulted out of love was still better than being ignored as happened at home. I tried to convince Laura to break up with Victor, but she wouldn't listen. Mama, surprisingly, also started saying that Laura should leave him, but my sister thought it was just because Mama didn't want to see her happy. She didn't understand that for the first time in our lives, Mama and I were right about something. "Laura, this man is going to kill you," I would say, looking at a purple mark on her neck. "Please, listen to what I'm saying. You don't understand anything about love," Laura would respond, with all the arrogance of her 17 years. "You only know how to date boring boys like John Carter." It wasn't true. John Carter was a sweetheart, treated me like a princess, and our relationship was everything hers should have been, but wasn't. But Laura was so lost, so confused, so needy, that she preferred a love that hurt to no love at all. The months went by, and Victor became increasingly violent. It wasn't just slaps anymore. It was punching, kicking, shoving against the wall, always in places that didn't show, always followed by threats of what would happen if Laura told anyone. "If you report me, I'll kill you and your sister too," he would say, his eyes shining with a malice that froze the blood. "And then I'll kill your mother. No one will be left to tell the story." Laura began to live in constant fear, but at the same time couldn't stay away. Victor had become her drug, her addiction. In the good moments, when he was affectionate, she felt in heaven. In the bad moments, when he was violent, she felt in hell. But both extremes were better than the indifference she received at home. I noticed everything, but didn't know how to help my sister. Many times I tried to talk to her. Many times I tried to convince her to ask for help. But Laura was so ashamed, so confused, so dependent on that sick love that she pushed everyone away. It was during this time that Laura started with other things. Victor not only beat her, but offered strange medications, pills that he said would calm her down, that would make her forget her problems. At first they were common tranquilizers, then they became stronger, more dangerous. "They're just to relax," Laura would tell me when I found the small bottles hidden in her room. Victor gets them at the pharmacy where his cousin works. They're prescription medicines. But I saw my sister changing. Her eyes becoming glazed, her responses becoming slow, her way of walking becoming wobbly. Laura was sinking into a hole that seemed to have no bottom, and neither I nor Mama could pull her out. Mama, in fact, began to get truly worried when she noticed that Laura was different. It wasn't just teenage rebellion anymore. It was something more serious, more dangerous. But even so, instead of seeking professional help, Mama preferred to pretend that nothing was happening. "It's just phases," she would tell the neighbors when they asked why Laura was so thin, so pale. "Teenagers are like that. It will pass." That's how we reached the end of 1961. Laura completely lost in a relationship that was slowly destroying her, me desperate watching my twin sister sink into a bottomless pit, and Mama continuing to treat everything as if it were just another of Laura's rebellions that would pass with time. None of us imagined that the worst was yet to come, that this sick relationship and the dangerous drugs would evolve into something much darker, much more fatal, something that would change our lives forever in a way that we couldn't imagine, even in our worst nightmares. The year 1962 arrived like a storm that you see forming on the horizon but can't escape. Laura was increasingly thin, pale, absent. The medications that Victor gave her had evolved into things I didn't even know existed. Small bottles with strange liquids, colorful pills that she hid under the mattress, white powders that she sniffed when she thought no one was watching. January passed slowly, with Laura disappearing from home for days at a time. Mama pretended not to notice, but I saw the worry in her eyes when Laura came home in the early morning, stumbling, with red eyes and slurred speech. Daddy tried to talk to her, but Laura treated him like a stranger. "Where were you, daughter?" Daddy would ask, trying to stay calm. "Around," Laura would answer, going straight to her room without looking back. It was as if my sister was turning into a completely different person. The rebellious but affectionate Laura was disappearing, and in her place was emerging someone I didn't recognize. Someone empty, lost, who only came alive when Victor appeared with another little surprise for her to try. In February, things got drastically worse. Laura started having strange episodes. She would wake up in the middle of the night, screaming, cold sweating, shaking as if she had a fever. Other times, she would go days without sleeping, walking around the house like a ghost, talking to herself, laughing for no reason. "Helen, I'm seeing things," she told me one of those nights, grabbing my arm tightly. "Someone is following me. There are voices in the wall." I tried to talk to Mama, begged her to take Laura to a doctor, a pastor, anyone who could help. But Mama was more concerned with what the neighbors would think than with the health of her own daughter. "We're not going to spread around that we have a crazy person in the family," she would say. "Laura is just going through a difficult phase. It will pass." But it wasn't going to pass. And deep down, I think we all knew that. Victor kept showing up, but now it was different. When Laura was in the worst moments of her episodes, he disappeared. He only appeared when she was well enough to receive the new drugs he brought. It was as if he were a vulture waiting for the right moment to attack. One afternoon in March, I found Laura in the backyard, sitting under the apple tree, crying and talking to someone who wasn't there. "I'm sorry, Helen," she was saying to the air. "I'm sorry for ruining everything. I'm sorry for not being a better sister." I approached slowly, afraid of startling her. "Laura, it's me, the real Helen. I'm here." She looked at me with glazed eyes, as if she were trying to focus on me but couldn't. "Are you real?" she asked, extending her hand to touch my face. "Or are you just another of the things only I can see?" "I'm real, Laura. I'm your sister. And I'm going to help you get out of this." But how? How was a 19-year-old girl going to be able to help when even the adults in the house didn't want to acknowledge that there was a problem? The answer came in a way I never expected. In early April, on a Saturday morning, I woke up to a strange noise coming from Laura's room. It was a low, continuous moan, as if she were in great pain. I ran to her room and found a scene that haunts me to this day. Laura was on the floor, convulsing, with foam coming out of her mouth and her eyes rolled back. Beside her, on the floor, was an empty bottle and some scattered pills. "Mom! Dad! Help!" I screamed with all the strength in my lungs. Daddy arrived first, saw Laura on the floor, and froze. Mama came right after, looked at the scene, and started crying. "Call Dr. Anderson!" shouted Daddy. "Quick!" But when Dr. Anderson arrived, it was already too late. Laura had stopped convulsing, had stopped moaning, had stopped breathing. My twin sister, my other half, had departed forever at 19 years of age. Dr. Anderson, who had known our family forever, examined Laura and sadly shook his head. "It was an overdose," he said quietly to Daddy. "Her heart couldn't take it. I'm so sorry." Mama collapsed on the floor, crying. Daddy stood frozen like a statue. And I couldn't believe that my sister had become another victim of the drugs that Victor had introduced into her life. The wake was scheduled for the next day. The house filled with relatives, neighbors, family friends who came to pay their respects. Everyone talked about Laura as if she were a saint, as if they didn't know about the problems she faced. It was easier to pretend that she had died of some illness than to admit the truth. Victor showed up at the wake, cried as if he were the most suffering widower in the world, received hugs and condolences as if he were part of the family. Seeing that monster pretending to grieve for the death of the person he had destroyed left me with a hatred that burned in my veins. "I'm so sorry for your loss," he would say to whoever would listen. "Laura was a special girl. I loved her very much." Lies. If he loved her, he wouldn't have put poison in her life. If he loved her, he would have sought help for her instead of offering more drugs. If he loved her, Laura would still be alive. After the burial, when the relatives had gone and the house returned to silence, Mama called me for a conversation that changed my life forever. "Helen," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed, "I need to tell you something important." "What is it, Mama?" "Laura's death cannot have been in vain. She had a life ahead of her, had dreams, had a boyfriend who loved her." I started to feel a chill in my stomach, as if something very bad was coming. "Mama, I don't understand." "Victor is suffering greatly. He lost the love of his life. And you are identical to Laura. You were identical twins." The chill in my stomach turned to pure ice running through my veins. "Mama, what are you trying to say?" "I'm saying that you can console him. You can make him feel less alone. You can continue what Laura started." "Are you saying I should date Victor, the man who killed my sister with drugs?" "Don't talk like that. Victor loved your sister. What happened was an accident. And now he needs affection, attention. He needs someone who reminds him of Laura." It was at that moment that I understood that Mama had gone mad with grief. It wasn't possible that she was suggesting I replace my dead sister in the relationship with the man who had destroyed her. "Mama, this is crazy. I'm not going to date Victor. I have John Carter. And besides, Victor is dangerous." "Yes, you will," she said. And for the first time in my life, I heard an authority in Mama's voice that scared me. "Because Laura can't have died for nothing. Because Victor is a good boy who just needs a second chance. And because you will obey your mother. And if I don't want to, you will want to. Because if you don't, you will leave this house and never set foot here again. You'll be on the street without family, without home, without anything." It was an ultimatum. Either I obeyed Mama's madness, or I would lose everything I knew in life. At that time, a 19-year-old girl without family had nowhere to go, no way to support herself. It was either be on the street or accept what was being imposed. "Mama, give me some time to think." "There is no time. Victor is coming to dinner here tomorrow. And you're going to be nice to him. You're going to talk to him. You're going to show that you understand his pain." That night, I cried until I had no more tears. Laura had been dead for only 3 days, and Mama was already planning to hand me over to the man who had killed my sister. It was as if I were just a replacement part, a way to continue something that should have died along with Laura. The following Sunday, Victor came to dinner. He arrived well-dressed, perfumed, with flowers for Mama and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. During the meal, Mama couldn't stop talking about how I was similar to Laura, about how I could help Victor overcome the loss. "Helen has the same sweet way as Laura," Mama would say. "The same kindness, the same beauty. I'm sure you two will get along very well." Victor looked at me with an intensity that made me sick. It wasn't the look of mourning. It wasn't the look of someone who was suffering for the death of his girlfriend. It was a look of hunger, of possession, of someone who was seeing an opportunity. "Indeed," he said, "Helen is very similar to Laura. It's as if Laura were still here." After dinner, Mama made up an excuse to leave and left me alone with Victor in the living room. That's when he showed who he really was. "Your mother told me about her idea," he said, approaching me on the couch, "and I thought it was brilliant. You can be my new Laura. I am not Laura, and I never will be. You don't need to be. You just need to pretend you are." That's when I understood that this wasn't just Mama's madness. It was a joint plan, a conspiracy between her and Victor to transform me into a substitute for my dead sister. Mama wanted to maintain the illusion that Laura was still alive, and Victor wanted to have someone to continue controlling and abusing. "And if I don't accept, you will accept, because your mother needs this to not go completely crazy, and because I can make your life a living hell if you don't cooperate." The threat was clear. It wasn't just Mama blackmailing me with expulsion from home. It was Victor threatening me with the same violence he had done to Laura. That night, after Victor left, Mama came to my room with a box in her hands. "I brought Laura's clothes," she said. "Tomorrow you'll start wearing them." "Mama, this isn't right." "It's absolutely right. Laura would have wanted it this way. She would want you to take care of Victor, to make him happy." It was a lie. Laura would have been horrified at the idea of me getting involved with Victor. But Mama had created a fantasy in her head where everything made sense, where Laura was still alive through me. And that's how my nightmare began. With a mother in total denial about the death of her favorite daughter and a murderer disguised as a grieving boyfriend, plotting together to transform me into the ghost of my own sister. I hope you're enjoying my personal story. For the warriors who are still paying attention to this part of my account, comment Jesus below. I want to see who's really interested in my story. I'm very happy to know that someone is listening to me on the other side of the screen. On the following Monday, I woke up and found Mama sitting on the edge of my bed, holding a blue dress that I immediately recognized. It was Laura's favorite dress, the one she wore when she wanted to feel pretty. "Wear this," said Mama, with a voice that didn't allow for discussion. "Victor is coming to pick you up for an outing in a little while." "Mama, I can't wear Laura's clothes. She died less than a week ago." "She didn't die. She just changed bodies." Mama's words froze my blood. She had really gone mad, created a fantasy where Laura was still alive through me. I took the dress with trembling hands and went to the bathroom to change, feeling as if I were profaning my sister's memory. When I looked in the mirror, what I saw frightened me. With Laura's dress, my hair styled the way she liked it, I really looked like her. I looked so much like her that for a second I thought I was going to see Laura staring back at me. Victor arrived punctually at 2 in the afternoon, as if this were a normal date between boyfriend and girlfriend. Mama received him with smiles and coffee, as if he were the perfect son-in-law instead of the monster who had killed my sister. "How beautiful our Helen looks," she said, pushing me into the living room. "Just like Laura, isn't she, Victor?" "Exactly like her," he agreed, looking at me in a way that made me want to take a week-long shower. It's as if Laura had come back to me. We left the house, and Victor took me to the same places where he used to take Laura. The ice cream parlor on the main square, the lookout on the top of the hill, the dance hall at the edge of town. In each place, he forced me to sit in the same seats, order the same flavors, do the same things that Laura did. "Laura always ordered strawberry ice cream," he would say, ordering for me without consulting me. "And she always sat on this bench here, on the left side." It was as if he were directing a play where I was forced to represent my dead sister. Every gesture, every word, every expression had to be like what Laura did. If I tried to be myself, he would get irritated. "Laura didn't talk like that," he would correct me. "Laura laughed differently. Laura didn't sit with her legs crossed." At the end of the afternoon, when he brought me back home, Mama was waiting on the porch with a satisfied smile on her face. "How was the outing?" she asked, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. It was good," I lied, just wanting to run to my room and take off those clothes. "Great. You'll go out again tomorrow. It's important to maintain the routine that Laura had." Routine. Terrible word. I discovered that night that Mama and Victor had planned everything in the minutest detail. I would have to wear Laura's clothes, go to the places she went, do the things she did. It was as if they wanted to completely erase me and put her ghost in my place. In the days that followed, the situation got worse. Mama took all my clothes out of the wardrobe and put in Laura's, changed my hairstyle to be like hers, forced me to use the perfume that Laura used, the lipsticks she liked, even the earrings that were hers. "Now that's more like it," she would say, looking at me as if I were a doll she was dressing up. "Now you're perfect." Perfect for what? To be the copy of a dead person? To satisfy the sick fantasy of a mother who couldn't accept the death of her favorite daughter? Victor started showing up at our house every day. He would have lunch with us, dinner with us, stay late watching TV shows. Mama treated him as if he were my official fiancé, as if our relationship were the most natural thing in the world. During these visits, Victor forced me to sit next to him on the couch, hold his hand, listen to the stories he told about his times with Laura. They were distorted stories where he painted himself as the perfect boyfriend, and Laura as the problematic girlfriend who couldn't control herself. "Laura had these episodes," he would tell Mama while squeezing my hand hard. "But deep down she was a good girl. Just like Helen here." Lies. Laura never had episodes until she met Victor and the drugs he offered. But Mama drank his words as if they were sacred truths, nodding her head and agreeing with everything. "Poor Laura," Mama would sigh. "She was always very sensitive, but now Helen will take good care of you, won't she, my daughter?" And I, who had nowhere to run, just nodded my head and pretended to agree. It was on a Thursday in May that everything got drastically worse. Victor arrived at our house earlier than normal and asked to speak to me in private. Mama, always solicitous with him, made up an excuse to leave and left us alone in the living room. "Helen," he said, approaching me on the couch, "it's time for you to start being a real girlfriend." "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. Laura and I had intimacy. Now you need to continue from where she left off." I felt the blood freeze in my veins. He was talking about what I feared most, what I knew would happen eventually, but hoped to be able to postpone forever. "Victor, I can't do that. It's not right." "Yes, it is right. You're my girlfriend now, and girlfriends have obligations." I tried to get up from the couch, but he held me by the arm with a strength that left a mark. "Laura also resisted at first," he said, with a smile that disgusted me. "But then she learned to like it. You'll learn too." That afternoon, Victor raped me for the first time. I won't describe the details because some pains are too deep to be put into words. But when he finished, when he got up and adjusted his clothes as if nothing had happened, I was no longer the same person who had entered that room. "Your mother doesn't need to know the details," he said, adjusting his belt. "But she knows this is part of a serious relationship. If you tell her anything different from what she wants to hear, it will be worse next time." When Mama returned home, she found me in the bathroom, scrubbing my skin until it was red, trying to clean myself of a dirt that seemed to never come off. "Helen, are you okay?" she asked, knocking on the door. "Yes, Mama. Just taking a bath." "That's good. Victor told me you talked about the future, that you're getting along well." Getting along well. If she knew what getting along well meant in Victor's language. From that day on, a terrible routine was established. Victor would come to our house 3 times a week, always when Daddy was at work. Mama always made up an excuse to leave, leaving me alone with that monster. And always, after he left, I would run to the bathroom and spend hours under the shower trying to wash away a mark that didn't come off with soap. The worst part was having to pretend that everything was fine. During dinner, when Daddy asked about my day, I had to smile and say I was happy with Victor. When the neighbors complimented my boyfriend, I had to thank them and pretend I was lucky. When Mama talked about marriage and children, I had to agree and seem excited. "Victor is a good boy," Daddy would say, who didn't suspect anything. "He took good care of Laura. He'll take good care of you too." If he knew what kind of care Victor had given to Laura. The weeks went by, and I realized I was losing pieces of myself every day. In the morning, when I woke up, I would spend a few minutes confused, not knowing if I was Helen or Laura. Her clothes on my body, her perfume on my skin, her places that I was forced to frequent. Everything conspired to make me forget who I really was. Victor noticed this confusion and began to use it to his advantage. When I resisted something, he would say, "Laura liked this." Laura did this. You have to be like Laura. And Mama, always present to reinforce the fantasy. Helen, you need to try harder to be like your sister. Victor is suffering. He needs to feel that Laura is still here. It was on an afternoon in June that I had my first serious identity crisis. I was at the bathroom mirror, combing my hair the way Laura liked it, when suddenly I didn't recognize the reflection that was staring back at me. For some terrifying seconds, I thought it was actually Laura looking at me from the other side of the mirror. "Laura?" I whispered to the reflection. "Are you there?" That's when I understood that I was losing my sanity. The constant pressure to be another person, Victor's violence, Mama's complicity. Everything was destroying me inside, making me lose contact with who I really was. I started having nightmares every night. I dreamed that Laura came to visit me and accused me of stealing her life. I dreamed that I died and Laura came back to take my place. I dreamed that Victor killed me just as he had killed my sister, and Mama arranged for another girl to continue the farce. During the day, things weren't any better. Victor was becoming increasingly aggressive, more possessive, more cruel. He was no longer content to just use me sexually. He wanted to control every aspect of my life, every thought, every movement. "Laura never resisted so much," he would say when I tried to defend myself. "Laura knew what her place was. You're still learning." And then came the most humiliating part. After raping me, he would force me to thank him. "Say you liked it," he would order. "Say you love me. Say it like Laura used to say." Words that never came out of Laura's mouth because she was dead when she could no longer endure what he did to her. But I was alive, and I had to say these words to survive one more day. The bathroom ritual became sacred to me. It was the only place where I could be myself, where I could cry without being seen, where I could wash away the dirt that Victor left on my soul. I would spend hours under the shower, scrubbing my skin until it bled, trying to rid myself of his smell, his touch, the mark he left on me. Mama never asked why I took so long in the bathroom. I think deep down she knew exactly what was happening, but preferred to pretend she didn't know. It was easier to maintain the fantasy that I was happy being Laura's substitute. That's how I lived for months, like a ghost of my own sister, a living doll programmed to satisfy the sick fantasies of two people who should have protected me, but who instead transformed me into a prisoner in my own home. Each day that passed, I felt as if Helen was dying a little more, and Laura was resurrecting through me. It was a slow, silent death, invisible to everyone except me. And the worst part was knowing that no one would come to save me, because in everyone's eyes, I was living a beautiful romance with my deceased sister's boyfriend. Until one afternoon in August, when I had already given up any hope, I heard Mama talking on the phone about someone's visit that would change everything. Aunt Connie, Mama's older sister, was coming from Chicago to pay us a visit. Aunt Connie arrived on a hot afternoon in August 1962, getting off the bus from Chicago with 2 large suitcases and the demeanor of someone who was used to the outside world. She was Mama's older sister, but the two were completely different. Where Mama was submissive and quiet, Aunt Connie was firm and talkative. Where Mama accepted everything without questioning, Aunt Connie questioned everything without accepting. It had been 5 years since she had visited us, and I barely remembered what she was like. But when I saw her getting off that bus with her well-arranged hair, modern dress from the city, and high-heeled shoes that made noise on the dirt ground of the bus station, I knew immediately that our house would be different while she was here. Mama had been nervous since morning, cleaning the house top to bottom, changing the towels, arranging flowers in the living room vase. It was as if Aunt Connie's visit was an inspection that she needed to pass. "Helen, go change that outfit," Mama said when Aunt Connie was arriving. "Put on Laura's blue dress, the one you like the most." It was a lie. I hated that dress, hated everything that had been Laura's. But I obeyed, as I always obeyed. And when Aunt Connie entered our house, I was dressed as my dead sister once again. The first thing Aunt Connie did was look me up and down with a strange expression, as if something wasn't adding up in her head. "Helen," she asked, studying me carefully. "My God, how you've grown. You're different." "It's because she's dating now," Mama quickly explained, "with Victor, who was Laura's boyfriend. They fell for each other after the poor thing died." Aunt Connie frowned, but didn't say anything at that moment. She just continued looking at me in a way that made me uncomfortable, as if she were trying to decipher a puzzle. During dinner, Daddy told Aunt Connie about Laura's death, about how difficult it had been for the whole family, about how Victor and I had grown closer after the tragedy. It was a romanticized version of the facts, a beautiful story that hid the terrible truth of what was really happening. "And this Victor?" asked Aunt Connie. "What's he like? How old is he?" "He's a very good boy," answered Mama. "He took very good care of Laura. Now he's taking care of Helen. He's 22 years old, works at his father's store, very responsible." Went Aunt Connie, but from her face I could tell she wasn't very convinced. That first night, Aunt Connie went to sleep in the guest room that was next to mine. Around midnight, I heard a soft knock on my door. "Helen? Can I come in?" I opened the door and found Aunt Connie in her nightgown with a worried expression on her face. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Can we talk for a little bit?" I let her in and we sat on my bed. For a few minutes we were in silence until she asked, "Helen, are you okay? Really?" The question caught me off guard. It had been so long since anyone had asked how I really was that for a moment I didn't know how to respond. "I am, Aunt Connie." "Are you sure? Because you seem... I don't know how to explain it. You seem haunted." Haunted. The word was perfect. I was haunted by the ghost of my own sister, forced to live her life, to date her man, to be her instead of being me. "It's just that I'm still sad about Laura's death," I lied. "And this relationship with her ex-boyfriend? How did it start?" "It happened naturally. We consoled each other." Aunt Connie looked at me for a long time, as if she were trying to read something written on my forehead. "Helen, if you ever need to talk about anything, you can trust me, understand?" Those words planted a seed of hope in my heart. For the first time in months, I felt that maybe I had found someone who could help me. But I was still too afraid, too conditioned to keep secrets, to tell the truth at that moment. The next day, Victor came to have lunch with us as he always did. Mama introduced him to Aunt Connie with pride, as if he were the perfect son-in-law that any mother would dream of having. "Victor, this is my sister Connie from Chicago." "Very pleased to meet you, Mrs. Connie," he said, shaking her hand with that fake smile that I knew so well. During lunch, I observed Aunt Connie studying Victor carefully. She asked casual questions about his work, his family, his plans for the future. Normal questions, but I could tell there was something more behind them. "And how long have you two been dating?" she asked. "About 4 months," Victor answered. "Since shortly after poor Laura passed away. 4 months, enough time to get to know a person well." "I know Helen very well," he said, looking at me in a possessive way that gave me chills. "She's exactly how Laura was. Sweet, obedient, affectionate." Aunt Connie noticed the way he looked at me, noticed how I shrank when he said those words. I saw a shadow pass through her eyes, a suspicion forming. After lunch, Victor called me to talk in the living room, as he always did. Aunt Connie said she was going to rest in her room, and Mama made up an excuse to go take care of the chickens in the backyard. But this time, something was different. Maybe it was Aunt Connie's presence in the house. Maybe it was knowing that someone was paying attention, but for the first time in months, I tried to resist when Victor started touching me. "No," I whispered. "There are people in the house." "So what?" he said, pushing me onto the couch. "Your aunt is sleeping. Your mother is in the backyard. No one will know." But this time I resisted more, tried to get up, tried to move away. Victor got angry and gave me a slap on the face that echoed through the living room. "Don't make me lose my patience, Helen," he said. "You know what happens when you don't cooperate." That's when I heard a noise in the hallway. Footsteps approaching the living room. Victor heard it too and quickly moved away from me, adjusting his clothes and pretending we were just talking. Aunt Connie appeared at the living room door with a glass of water in her hand. "Excuse me," she said. "I just came to get water from the kitchen." But from her eyes, I knew she had heard the slap, had noticed my red face, had observed how Victor quickly moved away from me. She passed through the living room slowly, looking at me carefully, and I saw that her expression had completely changed. When Victor left that afternoon, Aunt Connie called me to help her organize the clothes in her suitcase. But instead of talking about clothes, she closed the door to the room and turned to me with a seriousness that scared me. "Helen, I need to know something. Is this man hurting you?" The question was direct, straightforward, with no way to escape. For a few seconds, I was paralyzed, not knowing whether I should lie as I always lied or if I could finally tell the truth. "Aunt Connie, Don't lie to me. I saw the mark on your face. I heard the slap he gave you." "Does this man hit you?" I started to cry. After months of holding everything inside me, the tears came out like a dam breaking. "He's not like Mama thinks," I managed to say between sobs. "He's dangerous. He forces me to do things." "What kind of things?" I couldn't speak. I was too conditioned to keep secrets, too traumatized to put into words what Victor did to me. But Aunt Connie was smart, experienced. I didn't need to explain everything for her to understand. "My God," she whispered. "Helen, does your mother know about this? She wants me to be like Laura. Wants me to continue Laura's relationship, says it's for everyone's good." Aunt Connie was silent for a long time, processing what I had just told her. When she spoke again, her voice was loaded with an anger I had never heard before. "This isn't a relationship, Helen. This is a crime. And your mother is being an accomplice to a crime. But Aunt Connie, I have nowhere to go. If I don't obey, Mama kicks me out of the house. You won't need to obey anything anymore. I'm going to take care of this." In the days that followed, Aunt Connie began a silent investigation. She observed everything, paid attention to every detail, asked seemingly innocent questions that revealed a lot about the real situation in our house. She noticed how Mama always dressed me in Laura's clothes, noticed how Victor treated me as his property, noticed how I trembled whenever he came near, noticed how I disappeared into the bathroom for hours after he left. "Carla," I heard her talking to Mama one morning, "don't you find it strange that Helen only wears Laura's clothes?" "It's because they were the same size," Mama lied. "And Laura's clothes are prettier. Victor likes it when Helen dresses like her sister." "And why does Victor have to like how Helen dresses?" "Because he's still mourning Laura. Helen helps him feel better." Each of these conversations left Aunt Connie more concerned, more convinced that something very wrong was happening. But she was intelligent, knew that she needed more than suspicions to be able to act. The opportunity she was waiting for came on a Thursday in September. Victor had arrived earlier than normal and was particularly aggressive. Mama went out to buy bread at the bakery, and Aunt Connie said she was going to take a nap. But instead of sleeping, she stayed awake, paying attention to everything that happened in the living room. And this time, Victor felt free to be who he really was. "Today you're going to learn a lesson," he said, pushing me with more violence than normal. "You've been too rebellious lately. You need to remember what your place is." The violence was worse than usual. He was irritated by Aunt Connie's presence in the house, irritated by having to disguise, irritated by not being able to completely control me as before, and he took it all out on me. From the next room, Aunt Connie heard everything. The slaps, the pushes, my pleas for him to stop, his threats, the sounds of clothes being torn. She heard him calling me Laura, forcing me to respond as if I were her, forcing me to say things that made me vomit with disgust. When it was over, when Victor left the house whistling as if nothing had happened, Aunt Connie waited a few minutes and then came to the living room. She found me on the floor, crying, trying to adjust my torn clothes. "Helen," she said, kneeling beside me. "This ends. Today, this ends." But she still needed concrete proof, something she could show to the authorities, something that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt what was happening, and that proof came in a way that none of us expected. On the following Friday, Aunt Connie was arranging the wardrobe in the guest room when she found an old shoebox hidden behind the winter clothes. Curious, she opened the box and found letters. Many letters, all written by Victor. They were letters he had written to Mama during the previous months. Letters where they discussed the details of their plan, where they talked about me as if I were an object, where they arranged how they were going to train me to be the perfect substitute for Laura. One of the letters said, "Mrs. Carla, Helen is resisting too much. You need to talk to her. Explain that it's her obligation to do what I say. Laura understood this after she learned. Helen will understand too." Another letter was even worse. "The girl is starting to accept better. She just needs a few more months of training. When she's completely tamed, we can start planning the wedding." Tamed, training, wedding. words that revealed the complete monstrosity of what they were doing to me. Aunt Connie read all the letters, one by one, and with each line her expression became more horrified. When she finished, she was trembling with anger. "Now I have everything I need," she muttered, keeping the letters in her purse. "Now I can end this charade." That night, after dinner, Aunt Connie asked to have a private conversation with Mama and Daddy. She said it was about family matters, that I didn't need to participate. I went to my room, but left the door ajar to try to hear what was going to happen. And that's when Aunt Connie exploded our house of lies. From my room, I heard Aunt Connie take the letters from her purse and place them on the living room table. The sound of paper hitting wood echoed through the house like a judge's gavel giving the final sentence. "Carla," said Aunt Connie, with a voice that cut like a razor, "you're going to explain to me what these letters mean." The silence that followed was deafening. I could imagine Mama looking at the letters, recognizing Victor's handwriting, understanding that she had been discovered. "Connie, where did you get these?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is what's written here. Helen is resisting too much. Needs more training. When she's tamed." "Tamed, Carla? You're talking about your own daughter as if she were an animal." I heard Daddy asking what was happening, Mama stuttering attempts at explanation, Aunt Connie reading excerpts from the letters out loud. Each word she read was like a shot echoing through the house, destroying years of lies and secrets. "Mrs. Carla, the girl is learning to obey better. Yesterday she cried less than last week." Aunt Connie's voice was loaded with disgust. "Carla, are you reading this? Are you hearing what this monster does to Helen?" "Connie, you don't understand." Mama tried to defend herself. "Helen needs to learn to be a good wife. Victor is educating her, just like he educated Laura." "Educating?" Aunt Connie's scream was so loud that it knocked something over in the living room. "Carla, this here isn't education. This is rape. This is violence, and you are an accomplice." It was then that Daddy understood what was happening. I heard his chair creaking as he stood up, heard his heavy footsteps going toward my room. "Helen!" he shouted. "Come here right now!" I left the room trembling, prepared for another session of lies and pretending. But when I reached the living room, I saw that this time it would be different. Daddy was holding one of the letters, reading with an expression of horror on his face. Mama was crying on the couch, and Aunt Connie was standing in the middle of the living room with the posture of a warrior who could finally fight. "Helen," said Daddy, with a trembling voice, "is what's written here true? Is this man, is he doing these things to you?" I looked at Mama, who was staring at me with pleading eyes, silently begging me to continue lying. I looked at Aunt Connie, who was encouraging me with a nod. And finally, after months of forced silence, I found my voice. "It's true, Daddy. It's all true." What happened next was like a hurricane passing through our living room. Daddy yelled, Mama cried, Aunt Connie demanded explanations. Letters were read, truths were revealed, lies were destroyed. Our family imploded on that September night in 1962. "How could you do this to your own daughter?" Daddy shouted at Mama. "How could you hand Helen over to this criminal?" "I just wanted Laura to continue living," Mama cried. "I couldn't accept that she had died. Helen could be Laura, could continue what Laura had started." "Laura died of an overdose because of this same man," shouted Aunt Connie. "And you delivered Helen to him to continue destroying. You sacrificed one daughter to save the ghost of the other." Daddy turned to me with tears in his eyes. "Helen, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask for help?" "Because Mama said that if I told, she would kick me out of the house. And Victor said he would kill everyone if I said anything." "My God," whispered Daddy. "My God, what have we done?" It was then that Aunt Connie took control of the situation. "What you did was deliver an innocent girl to a predator. But this ends today. Today." She picked up the phone and dialed the police station. At that time, in a small town, family problems rarely reached the police. But Aunt Connie wasn't willing to let it slide. "Sheriff Davis, this is Connie Wilson. I need to report a crime. A man is abusing a 19-year-old girl with her mother's complicity." Mama tried to grab the phone from Aunt Connie's hand, but Daddy held her back. "No, Carla, enough. This has to be resolved." Sheriff Davis arrived an hour later, accompanied by 2 deputies. He was a man known to the family, who had grown up in Millfield and knew everyone in town. When he saw the letters, when he heard my testimony, when he understood what was really happening, his expression completely changed. "Mr. Peterson," he said to Daddy, "this here is a police matter. We're going to have to arrest this young man." "And my wife?" asked Daddy, looking at Mama with a mixture of anger and sadness. "She's an accomplice to all this. We'll investigate her involvement as well." That same night, Victor was arrested. The police went to his house, showed him the letters, confronted him with my testimony. He tried to deny everything, said I was lying, that Mama was crazy with grief over Laura's death. But the evidence was irrefutable. "This man will be tried," said Sheriff Davis, "and if he's convicted, he'll spend a long time in jail." Mama was also taken to the police station, but wasn't held. She was released the next day with the condition of not approaching me while the case wasn't resolved. When she returned home, she was a different person. She had aged 10 years in one night. The weight of what she had done, the shame of having been discovered, the guilt of having handed her own daughter over to a monster, all of this had broken something inside her. "Helen," she said, kneeling in front of me, "forgive me. Please, forgive me." I couldn't answer. Part of me wanted to forgive, because she was still my mother. But another part, the part that had suffered for months, that had been raped and humiliated, couldn't forget. Aunt Connie wasted no time. The day after the scandal, she announced her decision. "Helen is coming with me to Chicago. Here she'll never be able to recover from what happened." "Connie, she's my daughter," Daddy tried to protest. "Joseph, you let this happen under your nose for months. Helen needs to get out of here, needs to start over away from all this." Daddy knew Aunt Connie was right. In a small town, everyone would soon know about the scandal. The looks, the comments, the gossip. All of this would haunt me for the rest of my life if I stayed in Millfield. We spent the following days arranging my things, or rather, the few things that were actually mine. I discovered that almost everything in my wardrobe had been Laura's. Dresses, shoes, accessories. Everything had belonged to my dead sister. When I separated only what was really mine, very little remained. "It doesn't matter," said Aunt Connie. "In the city, you'll have new clothes, new life, new identity. You'll be Helen again, not Laura's shadow." A week after the explosion of truth, we were on the bus to Chicago. Mama and Daddy took us to the bus station, but the farewell was strange, formal, loaded with guilt and resentment. "Take good care of our girl," Daddy said to Aunt Connie. "I'll take better care than you did," she replied, without trying to be delicate. Mama couldn't say anything. She just looked at me with eyes full of tears and remorse, as if she were seeing a daughter she had lost forever. The trip to Chicago took 6 hours. During the entire journey, Aunt Connie talked to me about the future, about the plans she had for my new life. "You're going to study," she said. "You're going to work. You're going to meet good people. You're going to learn that not every man is like Victor, that not every family is like yours." "Aunt Connie, what if I can't forget? What if I can never trust anyone again?" "You will be able to. It will take time, it will hurt, but you will be able to. Because you're strong, Helen, stronger than you imagine." When we arrived in Chicago, I was impressed by the size of the city, by the movement in the streets, by the number of people. It was a completely different world from what I knew. Aunt Connie lived in a small but comfortable apartment in the center of the city. It had 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen, and bathroom. Luxury by the standards of the time. And most importantly, it had privacy. No one knew my story. No one knew where I came from. No one was going to judge me for what had happened. "This room is yours," she said, showing me a small room with a bed, wardrobe, and a window that faced the street. "Here you can be whoever you want to be." In the months that followed, Aunt Connie fulfilled all the promises she had made. She enrolled me in a school to complete my studies. She arranged a part-time job for me in a fabric store. She introduced me to people her age, independent women who worked and supported themselves. Gradually, I rediscovered myself. I remembered what it was like to be Helen instead of being Laura's shadow. I learned that I could choose my own clothes, my own places to go, my own dreams to dream. It wasn't easy. For a long time, I had nightmares about Victor. For a long time, I was startled when men approached me. For a long time, I felt guilty about what had happened, as if somehow I had deserved it. But Aunt Connie was always there to remind me of the truth. I was a victim, not guilty. I had survived, not failed. I was strong, not weak. 2 years later, in 1964, I received a letter from Daddy telling me that Victor had been sentenced to 8 years in prison. The news brought me relief, but also a strange sadness. Justice had been done, but that didn't erase the scars he had left on my soul. In 1967, I married Robert, a kind man I met at the church I attended with Aunt Connie. Robert knew my story, knew my traumas, but loved me anyway. Our wedding was small, simple, but full of true love, the kind of love I had thought never existed. We had 3 children, built a family based on respect and affection. I never returned to Millfield. Daddy died in 1975, Mama in 1980. Both took to the grave the guilt of what they had allowed to happen to me. Aunt Connie lived with me until she died, at 85 years old, in 1995. It was she who saved me. She who returned my identity to me. She who taught me that true family isn't just blood. It's choice, it's protection, it's unconditional love. Today, at 81 years old, I live in a simple house here in Chicago, close to my children and grandchildren. Robert, my husband, passed away 5 years ago, but left a beautiful family that he helped me build. We have 3 children: Mary Constance, whom I named in honor of the aunt who saved me, John Robert, and Anne Helen. They all grew up knowing my story, knowing the importance of protecting one another. I'm the grandmother of 7 beautiful grandchildren who fill my house with joy on weekends. They don't know all the details of what I went through, of course. They're still young. But they know that Grandma Helen is strong, that she overcame difficult things in life, and that because of this, they can trust me for anything. My routine today is simple, but full of purpose. Early in the morning, I wake up and make my coffee while listening to the birds in the small backyard I have. I like to take care of my plants. I learned that caring for things that grow is good for my soul. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I go to the community center in the neighborhood where I tell stories to the children. I don't tell my story, of course, but I tell fairy tales, American folklore legends, stories that teach that good always triumphs over evil in the end. On Wednesdays, I participate in a support group for women who have experienced domestic violence. Even after all these years, I still feel that I can help other women who are going through what I went through. It's comforting to see that my pain served a purpose, that my experience can be a light for those who are in darkness. Mama and Daddy never came to visit me after I left Millfield. Daddy tried to write some letters in the last years of his life, asking for forgiveness, trying to reconcile. I answered some, more out of politeness than real desire to resume contact. Some wounds heal, others we learn to live with. When Daddy died in 1975, I thought about going back for the funeral, but Robert dissuaded me. "Helen," he said, "you don't owe anything to those who didn't protect you when you needed it." And he was right. My true family was always Aunt Connie, then Robert and our children. Victor got out of prison in 1972 after serving 8 years. I found out by chance, through acquaintances who still lived in Millfield. They say he was never the same, that he left jail a broken, ashamed man. He moved to another state. No one ever heard from him again. I sincerely hope that he learned his lesson and never harmed any woman again. What makes me most proud in my life today is seeing how I raised my children. I educated them to respect women, to understand that no means no, to protect the most vulnerable. My son John Robert became a lawyer and works with domestic violence cases. He says he was inspired by his mother's story. Mary Constance became a psychologist and treats women who are victims of abuse. Anne Helen is a teacher and always keeps an eye on her students, looking for signs that a child is suffering at home. Sometimes I joke that my tragedy generated an entire family of people who protect other people. On weekends, when everyone gathers here at my house, I feel a peace that I didn't know was possible to feel when I was young. Seeing my grandchildren playing in the yard, hearing my children laughing in the kitchen, knowing that I built a family based on love and respect, this gives me the certainty that everything was worth it. I still have difficult days, of course. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares about the past. Sometimes I see some news on television about abuse and I'm pensive for days. But I've learned that this is part of who I am, and that I don't need to be ashamed of my scars. One thing I discovered with age is that telling my story helps not only those who listen, but mainly myself. For years, I kept everything inside me, thinking that forgetting was better than remembering. But I discovered that talking about what I went through is liberating. It's a way to transform pain into hope. That's why I started recording these videos. That's why I decided to share these intimate memories with you. Because I know that somewhere there's a new Helen going through what I went through, needing to hear that it's possible to survive, that it's possible to rebuild, that it's possible to be happy after trauma. My home today is small, but it's full of love. My life is simple, but it's mine. My voice sometimes trembles when I tell these stories, but it's a free voice, a voice that no one will ever be able to silence again. And it's this freedom, this peace conquered after so much suffering, that I want to share with each of you who are listening to me. Because regardless of what you're going through, regardless of how impossible the situation seems, there is always a way out. Today, I wake up every day grateful for having survived, for having found Aunt Connie at the right moment, for having had the courage to speak the truth when she gave me that opportunity. I know that many women don't have the luck I had, don't find a person willing to risk everything to save them. That's why I feel I have a responsibility. Each story I tell here, each word I share with you, is my way of being someone's Aunt Connie. It's my way of extending a hand to those who need it, even if it's through a screen. My simple routine here in Chicago brings me a happiness that I didn't know existed when I was young. When I watch a TV show and a scene of domestic violence appears, my children always ask me if I'm okay, if I want to change the channel. But I don't change it. I watch and pray for the women who are experiencing that in real life. Sometimes I receive letters from people who have heard my story in other places, women who thank me for giving them courage to report their abusers. I keep these letters in a special box, and when I have difficult days, I read them all again. They remind me that my pain served a good purpose. What moves me the most is when my granddaughters, who are already young ladies, come to talk to me about relationships. I always tell them, love doesn't hurt, love doesn't harm, love doesn't humiliate. If someone says they love you but makes you suffer, that person is lying. That's why I continue telling my story, even after all these years. Because I know that somewhere there are other girls going through what I went through. There are other families keeping monstrous secrets. There are other predators taking advantage of the vulnerability of those they should protect. My story proves that there's always a way out. There's always someone willing to help. There's always hope, even in the most desperate situation. Sometimes that help comes from where we least expect it. In my case, it came from an aunt who had the courage to see the truth and act. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for listening to me, for giving me strength to share these painful memories. If this story touched your heart in any way, leave a like so this grandma knows she didn't speak alone. And subscribe. You don't know how much this cheers the heart of an old lady like me. I hope everyone who's still watching will comment Jesus below. I want to see who's really interested in my story, because life teaches us that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There's always someone willing to extend a hand to us. There's always a way to break the chains that bind us. The important thing is to never give up looking for that light, never stop believing that better days will come. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey. Always remember, you are stronger than you imagine, and no matter how dark the situation seems, there is always hope waiting to guide you to freedom.